In the previous article, we had begun to discuss the Garden of Earthly Delights, and we were looking at the central panel to begin with, the frolicking nature of the nudes there, but then we provided some context for it by looking at the left-hand panel, which shows the fall of man, the introduction of sin into the world, perhaps sin even already being present there, perhaps all as part of God's plan. You'll notice that the landscape continues from the left-hand panel to the right-hand panel or to the center panel, a single continuous landscape, almost unbroken as we move our way through. We had been looking at the fountain in the center of the left-hand panel. We had seen that there was an owl there as a symbol of evil, and we've seen sort of the signs of evil throughout the landscape, even though the fall of man hadn't happened. Back in the center, we find prominent owls as well, which seem to link what's happening in the left-hand panel to what's happening in the center. On the left border, a man embraces an owl, and almost seems as if he shows it to us. Again, if the owl is a symbol of evil, this man is embracing evil, and that might begin to set the theme for what we're looking at in the entire triptych. There's another owl almost on exactly the same level on the right-hand panel, on the right-hand side of the panel. It's sort of here, whereas the other one is there. And this owl is resting atop a large piece of fruit. And you can see two figures have inserted themselves into that fruit and are dancing with cherries wrapping around their bodies as they perform a sort of strange dance inspired by the owl itself. So again, the owl is a symbol of evil. And the one on the right seems to suggest that Bosch is drawing a link between knowledge of evil, the owls, and the fruit, which abounds throughout the entire composition. There's fruit everywhere. Directly behind that owl, here on the composition, we see figures picking fruit, and this seems to relate directly back to the Garden of Eden on the left, which is the scene we don't see, but is coming next, where Adam and Eve will pick the fruit of the tree of knowledge. In this particular case, these figures who remind us of Adam and Eve are being offered a better kind of fruit by the figure at the left, as if to say that fruit was all well and good to get you where you are, but there's many more fruits yet to be had. And as we look through the rest of the composition, we find that fruit figures prominently, oversized fruits, as symbols of temptation, as symbols of lust, of giving over to your human desires rather than remembering your faith. So, again, to show us numerous details of this, we see here a bird with some sort of fruit, some sort of berry, skewered on its beak, and then tempting the different figures down below with it. We can see this just here in the composition. A group of figures gathered around a very, very large strawberry, perhaps, almost as if they're worshiping it like an idol. That can be seen just there on the composition. Figures partake in the fruit everywhere we look, nibbling at it, spilling out its interior so that they can enjoy it, really just overindulging everywhere that we look. This figure wears what appears to be like a blueberry or maybe a grape on his head as he seduces the woman next to him. All of these figures suggest to us that fruit is maybe considered as a symbol here that relates directly back to the Garden of Eden. And that here the figures are partaking of fruit as a symbol of the fact that they are now living out the legacy of Adam. They are living out the curse of Adam, which is in fact to be sinful. To drive that point home, in the lower left-hand corner, we see a figure actually gesturing back to the Garden of Eden. Behold, this is where this all came from. And you'll notice that the raised hand of that figure seems to point almost directly to Eve, which is typical to blame women for all of our troubles. Remember that the Renaissance, for all of its enlightened ideas, remained incredibly misogynistic and tended to blame women for the problems of mankind. And that's true here in Bosch's work. In the opposite corner, I think that's Adam and Eve again in the lower right-hand corner. In limbo, notice the woman leaning on her elbow. That pose of leaning on one's elbow like that is very much a pose of sadness in Renaissance art. And she holds still a piece of fruit in her hand. She seems to have grown hair all over her body, but the figure behind, probably Adam looking down at her. This is Adam and Eve as a result of the fall, I think. Although so much of what's going on in Bosch remains anyone's guess. So what we find is that the central panel is best understood in the context of the triptych. That the left-hand panel of Adam and Eve in Eden sets up what's going on in the central panel. We see the birth of sin, then we see sin being carried out by mankind, the curse of Adam himself. And then if we move to the right-hand panel, we see the punishment of sin. So it really does make sense as a moral image within the scope of this triptych, rather than looking at the central panel all by itself, where it seems like Bosch is reveling in the fun of sin. In fact, this is meant as a moral warning. It kind of tempts you to revel with him, but then reminds you that this is leading only one direction, which is toward hell itself. If we look at the center of the hell panel, we see this sort of tree man with his trunks planted in these boats that are on this icy river, looking back at us, reveling figures up above with a musical instrument there, a bagpipe playing. We'll see musical instruments figure large here. Inside the belly of this sort of egg-shaped belly of this tree man, we see a tavern. It almost looks as if it's a bunch of revelry, but again, we'll find as we look at this that anybody that's reveling in hell is on their way to some very, very serious punishment. So here are a bunch of soldiers. They seem to figure strongly within this image, and inside the belly of this figure in the center, we see sort of an evil tavern, if you will. Another sad figure leaning and looking out as a rat-faced woman draws more wine to serve to the people here. In case you thought this was a happy place, you'll notice the toad-like stool that the man at the end of the table sits on. As we look through the rest of the panel, we see that people are being horribly, horribly tortured. Here, a bunch of demons attacks a soldier who seems to still carry in his hand a goblet, maybe a reference to the communion service, but that hasn't helped him at all. His neck has been torn apart. He's being gutted alive by these demons. Another man directly behind him, also a soldier, his crossbow hanging in the tree, is being skewered by this demon. So people are just horrifically, horrifically tortured everywhere we look within the image. Another man directly below that soldier beset by demons is been draped over the back of a very sharp knife and is slowly but surely being cut apart. You can see the blood staining the edge of that knife as well. In the lower left corner, more people are impaled. Even a heart is skewered by a sword, a head cut off, someone stuck in the back. But you'll notice that there's almost no fruit anywhere to be seen here. The fruits that were enjoyment in the center are now entirely missing. What we do see is that many people are tortured by things that brought them joy while they were alive. So, for example, we see a woman who seems to be an embodiment of vanity, looking at herself in a mirror. And as she does, she's being groped by this rat monster, who also looks into the mirror with her. And that mirror, as she looks into it, you'll notice is placed on the ass of a figure whose feet turn into the roots of a tree. So, again, this is judgment of things that perhaps brought pleasure or beauty in life, now bringing nothing but pain and torture. We see gamers, for example. Here's a backgammon game being held aloft by these demons. People are, again, being tortured by the things that brought them happiness in life. In the lower left corner, a gambler. There's a dice with a hand being impaled on this shield, and the figure wearing the shield is busily impaling in the same way. Our gambler, whose hand is also been stuck through by a sword. How do we know he's a gambler? Not only is there that dice on the shield, but there are a series of cards just off his right hand in the lower left corner of the panel. As I mentioned, music seems to figure prominently in this. Here we see a sort of a combination lute on the left and harp on the right, and you'll notice that each of these musical instruments is being used to torture people. A demon on top of the lute with a man tied to it as if to a column to be whipped, another man crucified on the strings of the harp. Adjacent to that, we have a hurdy-gurdy, someone stuck inside the hurdy-gurdy playing the triangle, but the man grinding the hurdy-gurdy. Next to that, a cornet or a flute with a man tied to it, another flute jammed up his ass. Again, musical instruments used to torture. If we look at the hurdy-gurdy grinder, you'll notice that the man behind him is penetrating his ass with a cane that sort of resembles the hurdy-gurdy grinder. Again, torture linked to pleasure. The pleasures of the flesh during life bring us only pain in the afterlife. Down below, a figure encased inside a drum as a demon beats on it. And I've had that kind of headache before, a sort of migraine sufferer, if you will. And that certainly captures the sense of that throbbing sound. Also in this general vicinity, just below the drum, we see a rabbit blowing the hunter's horn, dressed as a huntsman, carrying on his staff his hunting catch, which is another human whose stomach erupts, while the huntsman's dogs now attack the hunter himself, attack another human. So those things that bring us pleasure during life now really only bring us pain and suffering. So there's little doubt that Bosch had with this triptych a very moralizing message. He's showing us how not to behave. He's showing us the results of sinful behavior.